What is up, guys? This is Michael Williams from Cartoon Universe, and today I'm counting down my top 10 favorite Pearl-centric episodes. Pearl has slowly become one of my favorite characters in the series. She originally started out as just a motherly, overly protective perfectionist, but as the series progressed, we learned the more complex inner workings of her character. Granted, this happened with all of the characters, but with Pearl I feel like it made her especially more likable, flaws and all. So, without further ado, let's get our tears and our vocal cords ready for the top 10 Pearl-related episodes. Number 10, Steven the Sword Fighter. So ironically enough, this episode actually didn't have a ton of Pearl in it technically, yet it still centered around her. The episode introduced to us what is known in the professional field as poofing. We see Pearl get impaled by a sword, and this was the first moment in the show that had the audience going, oh no, oh god, is she dead? Main characters die in this cartoon? Is this Game of Thrones Jr.? Obviously this wasn't the case, but it taught us about a very important piece of the world of Steven Universe and how gems work, and seeing Pearl take 2 weeks to come back really emphasized how severe these situations can be. Granted, Pearl is a perfectionist, so she took a little longer than normal, but that just showed us more of her character. Number 9, Space Race. This was a great episode to show off Pearl's amazing engineering genius by just casually building a frickin' rocket ship. We see that despite fighting for Earth for all these years, she actually really misses homeworld in all of its beauty. Hey, I'd miss my home planet too after being away for so long.
Somehow, someday, we'd have to say goodbye.
Okay, maybe not, but still. Anyway, she tries to use this faulty rocket to reach homeworld and take Steven with her. And there's just so much wrong with everything about this. Let's see, the rocket ship wasn't going to make it, so Pearl and Steven nearly fell to their deaths, and Pearl was totally gung-ho about it, but Steven had to make sure she didn't, kill them. Pearl was going to take Steven for 50 years without even telling the rest of the crystal gems, and without getting permission from Gregg, who would have been dead by the time they returned, never to see his own son again. And she didn't even know how Steven aged at that point. She could have taken away half of his life on Earth. Also, or they're just gonna waltz into homeworld for a little vacation. Yeah, don't mind me, just a renegade rebel Pearl and the child of Rose Quartz here. Yeah, just here to sightsee. What? Pearl's got issues. But it's cool. We're working on them. Just hang in there. Number 8, Soaring to the Sword. Now this episode was mostly Connie centered, but it gave us a deeper look into Pearl's motives as well. It focused on Pearl training Connie to be able to protect Steven, but what we got was a glance into Pearl's skewed views due to her overwhelming love for Rose Quartz and embedded insecurity, with her teaching Connie that she's pretty much worthless and only Steven matters. Obviously, Steven wasn't super cool with this way of thinking, and when confronting Pearl about it, we are given what is still one of the biggest emotional freakouts in the series. All Pearl ever wanted was to protect Rose. Rose was her everything, and as Pearl stated herself, Rose made her feel like she was everything. But she, of course, took that to the extreme. She fought as though she was nothing and like her life had no worth in comparison to Rose. This thought process was just a taste of Pearl's unhealthy mindset that would be addressed later on. Number 7, We Need to Talk. We Need to Talk was a cool flashback episode that gave us a look at Pearl fighting for Rose in a different way, trying to win her affection over Gregg. Although Pearl was being kind of a petty tool to Gregg, trying her best to show off, I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Yeah, of course she was being super thirsty, but I've been in similar positions where some rando comes through out of nowhere and tries to take moves on my woman, know what I'm saying? But anyway, yeah, you kind of feel for her and connect with the pain she must be feeling. It gives you a new perspective on her behavior in the present day. Imagine being in love with someone for thousands of years, to never feel that love in return, and have some random person show up one day and erase any chances of that love ever being requited. Granted, she probably should have moved on after all that time, or at least made a move, but I get it, okay? I get it. Number 6, Rose's Scabbard. This is one of the more memorable episodes from Season 1. We get a look into not only Pearl's character, but a bit of Rose's past as well, mostly via hologram, but still. This is the episode where it was like, okay, Pearl is definitely gay for Rose, confirmed, like there's not much to debate anymore, and that was pretty cool to see because it made for an interesting dynamic and left for a lot of questions pertaining to how Gregg fit into everything and how it was handled. At this point, it wasn't even clear if Pearl and Rose were actually a thing or not, so it was a very cool and emotional episode that made Pearl more than just an archetype and bonded her and Steven even closer together. Number 5, Back to the Barn. Yet another episode showcasing Pearl's outstanding technical ability, but it took it a step further. This is the episode where we as the audience learn that there are multiples of every kind of gem, and we learn that pearls are simply meant to stand around and look pretty like a toy. This gave us a whole new respect for Pearl, that she not only was an awesome engineer, but was a master fighter despite not being designed to do those things. This really made Pearl shine as a character, and it seemed to be a big step in building her confidence. Number 4, Cry for Help. Whew boy, this one was a doozy. So remember when we got tastes of Pearl's insecurity? Yeah, well this episode was the entree. Seeing Pearl go out of her way to sabotage Garnet, just to feel even an ounce of the love that Ruby and Sapphire feel, made me just feel all different types of emotions. The word cringe comes to mind. But that's what makes Pearl such a well-written character. Yes, she's a good person, but she does things like this because insecurity, that's why. And there are people out there who behave in this manner, which makes it all that more real. And of course, this episode ended on a pretty sour note, which isn't necessarily common for these types of cartoons. But it's okay because, number 3, friendship. So this episode we see Pearl losing her mind over capturing Peridot, thinking that it will somehow make things okay between her and Garnet, but obviously that's not what the issue is. I love this episode because we get a very real talk between Garnet and Pearl. Garnet took the time to understand where Pearl was coming from and gave her some very much needed advice. You can't seek validation from anyone else but yourself. Pearl was so desperate for someone else to love her, but she didn't even truly love herself. And Garnet put things in perspective, that even though she's the leader and seems to have it all together, there are times that she looks to Pearl for strength. And even though her relationship seems flawless, there's really no such thing. Even the greatest, most healthy of relationships have their bumps. The moral is don't worry so much about what everyone else has and what everyone else is doing better. Focus on you, love yourself, and within time, things will work out. Number 2, Mr. Gregg. Mr. Gregg has easily become one of the biggest fan favorites within the community, and I totally understand why. Not only was this the first episode to actually be a full-on musical, but it finally addressed the elephant in the room between Pearl and Gregg. Pearl was caught singing about her feelings about Rose and Gregg, and that old chestnut, because how would they not hear you, Pearl? You were literally built in mere feet away from them. What was your plan here? Anyway, thankfully Steven orchestrated the whole thing on purpose so they can finally talk about the situation, and I gotta say, hit me in the feels pretty hard. Seeing them talk about things and reminisce about Rose, and realizing that they do in fact have common ground within Steven was just so perfect. I'm excited to see how their change in relationship dynamic will affect their interactions in the future. And that music, boy, on point. And my number 1 Pearl-focused episode is Last One Out of Beach City. Now this one is my favorite Pearl episode for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we got to see a side of Pearl that we've never really seen before, her wild and rebellious side. Because with her cautious and borderline uppity personality, it's easy to forget that she is a rebel, like literally a rebel of her entire home planet. I feel like this bad side of Pearl that we got to see was somewhat how she used to be during the rebellion, but as things calmed down, she became more careful. But even besides that, I feel like this is the episode where Pearl's developmental arc finally reached its close, or at least close to it. Now that she's talked it out with Gregg, and actively working on moving on from her unrequited love of Rose, she finally sets her eyes on a new girl. A new, young human girl. Granted, she looks a lot like Rose, but hey, maybe Pearl's just got a thing for thick chicks with big pink hair. But what was awesome was just seeing her say screw it, walk up to Mr. Girl, and get them digits, boy. When I saw this, I felt like I, too, had succeeded. And seeing Amethyst cheer her on as her wigman the whole time really made me feel happy. Looking back at all the bickering and bumping heads they used to do, it's great to see that they've moved past that and really bonding and embracing each other as close friends. And best of all, this episode showed us that Pearl is moving on. She's moving past all of her insecurities, she's letting go of her past, she's progressing. And this is what made me not only like her more as a character, but I just feel really happy for her. And I know Pearl's character arc is going to resonate with a lot of different people, and hopefully inspire those who have dealt with similar issues. But that pretty much covers it for my top 10 Pearl episodes. What'd you guys think of the list? Anything you would change? Anything you would add? Let us know in the comments down below. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter, and go ahead and follow my Twitter too. I really appreciate that. We also want to give a quick shout out to all of our patrons. Thank you guys so much for all your support. If you haven't already, be sure to check out our Patreon in the description below or at the end of the video. You can get some dope rewards, and it helps us make even newer and higher quality content for you guys. But anyways, guys, I've been Michael Williams. You've been watching Cartoon Universe. We will see you in the next video. Peace.
Let this be the perfect battle.